Okay, so we've added a file upload. So we want to make some other changes to our index, both our index and our create views. We'll probably leave the other ones for now. So what should we do on this index page? What changes could we make so that it's more, looks better and is more functional? You can use the chat or your mic. What's something on here you think that we should be changing? Okay, so let's start with that. Let's show the photo. So on our index view, we'll write an if statement that if we have a photo value, we actually want to generate it in a proper image tag. And maybe we'll shrink the size. So let's go to our index view for product. And down on the scaffolded code on line 59, this is where it's showing the photo. So we're going to take out that line and we're going to replace it with an if statement. So on line 59, we're going to check if the item.photo does not equal null. In this case, we're going to render an image tag. So our path will be our images, product uploads. We'll be sure to add an alt tag that says product photo. I also want to make the photo not too big. So maybe I'll say width equals 100. So it will scale. So it'll only display at 100 pixels. So I've taken out line 59 and I've replaced it. I will put the code in the chat in a minute. I want to see if this works. So I'll refresh my page. So now it shows our image. Maybe a little big. Maybe I want to shrink it a bit more. Maybe I'll set it at, I don't know, 70 pixels. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so I've replaced line 59 with this code. If we've got a photo, we're going to show the image that's in the images, product uploads. Okay, what other changes should we make to this page? How else could we make it better? Good idea, Justine. What should the H1 said instead of saying index? Yep, we'll do that. So we can do some formatting as well. And the headers. Okay. Yep, so let's change this H1 that says index. So that's up on line 8. Also in our title in the browser tab, it says index. So let's change both line 4 and line 8 to say product.
Aliases is suggesting that the label be centered and just to make it look different.
Sorry, the label meaning the photo here?
The name over top of the photo.
Yep. Okay. So we could do that. Sure. So if we want, down on line 31, if for this heading we add class equals, we could use Bootstrap. We could use text center. So I modified line 31. So, okay, wrong class. I probably maybe have to do it down here as well then. So I'll center both line 58 and line 31. Let's see how that works. Okay, so that's centered now. Good suggestion. Okay. Some of these other changes, so Leo, some of the suggestion you're making, yeah, like here, product name in Pascal case, we never show this, as well as the formatting. So some of these changes we can actually make in our product model. And that way they'll apply globally, because not only does it say product name here, but for example, it says product name here. So we can make these changes in the individual views, but the more efficient way is actually to update the model. So if we go to our models, product.cs, we can actually set some aliases that automatically will show up in the label. So instead of product name, we can say display name equals name, for example. And if we want our alcohol content to have an alias, we can say name equals alcohol percentage, for example. So instead of our labels saying product name and alcohol content, they're just going to say name and alcohol percentage. Yes, Awais, that's another thing we could do. We could center that text horizontally. If I've got time, I will come back to that. There are a few other changes I do want to make. So notice, I didn't change the view, but I changed the model, and now it updates the index. It updates create. It updates all the views with our aliases. So you can change these labels in the views if you like, but it's more efficient to make those changes in the models. Because these models, these are used by all of the scaffolded views. We also want to try to format the price as currency. So we can try adding some formatting again to our model. So what we want to set is a display format. So we're going to format it as a string. Our data format string is equal to, and we're going to use Microsoft's currency format, which is a lowercase c. That represents currency. So the 0 represents the value we want to format, and the C represents currency. Now, what currency it shows is based on the location of the web server. So if we're in Japan, it's going to show a yen symbol. If we're in the UK, it's going to show a British pound symbol. If our server's regional settings are set to Canada or the US, it's going to use a dollar sign. So we'll build that. Oasis, I do like your idea. I'm not sure what the bootstrap class we'd have to use for that is, so I'm going to leave that just for now. But it is a good idea. If I had a quick fix, I would implement it. So we'll try this. We'll see if this works in our controller. I'll refresh my index view again, and hopefully our price. We may have to do the price formatting in this view. Oh no, that works. So that works for formatting. Our alignment doesn't look great though, because typically numeric values should be right aligned. So maybe I want to right align my price heading and price column as well as our alcohol percentage and volume. Maybe all three of these, because they're numeric values, we want to right align the headings and values. So I can change that in my index view as well. So I'm going to go back to the index view. We'll try it in the price. So my price heading and price values, I'm going to add class equals text dash right. We'll refresh, see how it looks. Yeah, and I want to do the same with alcohol and volume. So things are right aligned. So I'm going to do the same thing on my alcohol content and volume, both in the heading and in the table. This will push both of these columns to the right, and it'll right align our numbers instead. Okay, so it's starting to look better. I can also use a little more bootstrap formatting to alternate the background colors on our table rather than every row being white. I'll add a couple other classes to the table tag so that we'll get alternating background colors. So on line 13 in my table class definition, I'm going to add table striped. We used these last semester with our PHP music library. I'll add table striped and table hover. Then I'm going to add a few more products. So now we get, I want to add a few more. So now we get alternating background colors, gray and white. So it's looking better. Not done, but looking better. I'm going to add one or two more products. And then there's one other change we want to make. We've customized the model, we've customized the view. We need to customize the controller. So I'm going to go back to create a new product. So I'm going to add one more product. Now, it adds to the database. It shows our image, which is all good, how we want it to. What about the order that these are appearing in? if I keep adding products, where are those new products going to appear in the list? Yeah, so it's basically ordered by the product ID, right? You can see if I mouse over, you can see in my status bar at the bottom left, product ID 1, 2, 3. So if this list gets big, it's kind of hard to manage. So what would be a more useful way of displaying this list? How could somebody find an item in the list quickly? Yeah, I think let's change the default order. So instead of ordered by product ID, oldest to newest, it's ordered by the product name instead. So this we're going to change in the controller, in the query that is populating this page. So now I'm going to go to the products controller. And in our index method, it's got some code that queries the database and also includes the categories. So this is where the database query is being run. There's no SQL command. It just uses our MVC framework, uses the product model to go and fetch the list. So when we're doing this, we want to also add an order by clause here. So we're going to use one of these Lambda expressions we saw last week. Leo asked about it, and I didn't give a very good explanation. So we want to order by the product name. So this syntax for these lambdas, or it's called a fat arrow expression, the equals and a greater than. This is basically an anonymous function where we're declaring a parameter and then populating it. We're going to see this syntax a lot. This is built into all of the code. So for example, we are finding a product by ID. We declare an M parameter representing an anonymous function, and then we're setting the ID equal to the ID value we have. So we're going to use these expressions whenever we're modifying or writing our queries and setting parameters in the query. So when we load the products, we're including the categories. So we're using a Lambda expression here. And then another one to set out what column we want to sort by. So I'm going to save that change and build. Shrink this down. So I've added this onto my and now when I refresh, my Dos Equis beer should move to the top. So now it's in alphabetical order instead. So the scaffolding is always going to show you the data from oldest to newest. It's going to sort by ID number, which isn't typically the friendliest for users. Okay. So now our page is close to complete. We fixed the headings. We fixed the column headings by modifying our model. We've displayed the photos. We've added a little more bootstrap for alignment, and we formatted as currency. So this is getting closer to a working production web page. So the scaffold is a starting point. It's not an end point. Now there are a few other things we should update in our scaffold as well, particularly when we're going to create a new product, but I think this is a good start. We've made most of the changes that would make sense to make on the index view. We're not going to change the edit view because a lot of the changes we'd apply to create, we would just copy to edit, but I want to go to the create. And what changes should we make here? So we've already made a few, right? We've used our model so that it just says name and alcohol percentage, and we've allowed for file uploads. but there's a few other things here we should change, both visually, but also function-wise. Yeah, category ID. So Stella, what should that say? What should we replace this with? Yep, I think that's a good, so we want to take ID off that label. Good idea. What about this? I would suggest, yep, we can define input types. Yep. What about our list of categories? It's functional. How would we make it more user-friendly? Yeah, let's, again, order it alphabetically. No big deal right now because there's only 5 categories. What if there's 30 categories? If the list is just ordered by ID, it's going to be really hard to find the category we want. We also, not only should we enforce client-side validation, but we can also do things like this. Right now, I could set the alcohol percentage, for example, at 200. It's going to allow me to do this. And same with the volume. So we probably want to set ranges. So we can do it client-side, but we can also use our model to do it. I'm going to do it in the model first. And if you want client-side validation, we can do that as well. Okay. So we're going to make some changes in the models, some changes in the views, and some changes in the controller. First, we'll deal with category. We'll deal with this label and the drop down, and then we'll deal with the validation. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We should do it in both places. So on our create, here's our drop down list, right? We use the view data and it creates a new select list of categories, and it uses the ID for the values and the name as the visible text. So what we want to do here is we need to order by, not just get the list of categories, but we're going to add an order by with a Lambda expression. I'm just going to declare a parameter C, and we want to order by the name of the category. So the C parameter refers to our category object here. So this should sort our list alphabetically from A to Z. So I've added my order by clause. And now when I go to add a new product, our drop-down list should be alphabetical, which it is. Okay, one problem solved. Our label says category ID. This one is actually hard-coded into the view when it's a parent, a drop-down list for a parent field. So we need to open up the product create view, which we've already got open. So up here on line, so this one I'm going to change. It says ASP4, so in here, I'm actually just going to hard code in the word category. I think that should work for us. Okay, so we're just hard coding that change here. So we fixed our label. We're going to write the server-side validation in the model first, make sure it works. Then we'll also add the client-side validation. We'll do it in both places. Our heading is also kind of wonky. We have an H1 that says create, and then we have an H4 that says product. It should probably just say create a new product as H1. We can get rid of this H4. So here's our H1 that says create, and here's our H4 that says product. I'm just going to make the page heading say create a new product. And I'm going to do the same in my page title. I'm going to take out that H4. I think that'll look better. So it says create a new product. So we're getting there. We're going to add the data validation rules in our model. We'll make sure they work, and then we'll also add some input types on the client. So let's go back to our product model. Okay, what about our price? We probably should set up a range that the price can't be below 1 cent. So we can use the range attribute to set up a minimum and a maximum as a double. For alcohol percentage, our range should be from 0 to 100. So we'll use range here as well. Volume also shouldn't be below 0. Actually, it should be 1 or more. So on volume, I'm also going to add a range of 1 and, I don't know, some really high number. So we're going to use range 3 times to make sure we don't get any negative numbers or any maximum values that are too high and don't make sense. So we'll build. I'm going to try these validation rules out, and then we'll add a few other client-side validators, assuming that these work. Okay, so I've added range on line 23, line 28, and line 32. So I'll go and try and create a new product. So I'll put in a price of -2. And you notice it actually writes client-side validation right away with .NET. As soon as I leave the field, if I put in 200, it tells me. So it writes, the model validation generates JavaScript validation using jQuery. As soon as I fix these values, jQuery fires. So if you want to add client-side validation, you have to. We don't really need to, because in effect, when we validate in the model, it uses jQuery to write client-side validation for us. Yeah, it's great that we just do it through the models. Makes it easier. So you have to do less in your views. So you know what? I don't even think I'm going to bother putting validators in the views, because it is in effect validated using JavaScript on the client, using this jQuery validation script. So we would probably go and make similar changes to edit that we did here. Now the models are already the same. So notice if I set, right, it already tells me. So we could display the photo here with an upload. I'm not going to repeat the code. Easy enough to make the same changes to edit that we did to our add view. So you can apply those if you want to. So now our page is much more functional. all the labels make sense, all the validation rules are implemented on the server and through jQuery on the client. The headings make more sense, and data is presented in a more useful way. Okay. So this is how we would take what scaffolding gives us and customize the models, the views, and the controllers to make a better application, make it look better, make it easier to use, make all of the content and labels and formatting make sense. Okay, so the scaffolding is a starting point. It saves us time, but it's not enough to just scaffold and finish your application. So for your projects, I'd like to see you take things from the scaffold that don't really make sense and modify them and polish them. We're just going to look at one other quick thing, and then I'll let you go for today. So some people, a few weeks ago, I asked you, what other kinds of things do you want to learn with .NET? So many people said, I want to see how the database interaction works. Well, you've seen that now. We've been working with that for a couple weeks. Several other people talked about the design. So how can we change? How can we make this look more like our own site? So I'm just going to play around. I'm not a designer, but I'm going to make a few other changes to this to override some of the look. So the first thing maybe we want to do is I'll show you how maybe we could change some of the colors. We could change the font. We could change the logo, for example. And I promise we'll get this all done before 4 o'clock. Okay. So first thing is the font. So I'm going to go and I want to override the default font. So maybe I'll let's see, we want to use a Google font here. So I'll select this. Okay, I don't need to download it. Okay, so I'm just going to link to Google's font. I'll put this in the chat. So I'm going to add this font into our layout file in the header. So I'm going to open up my layout file, which is in Views Shared. And up here above our Bootstrap and default style sheets, I'm going to link to the Google font. You don't have to use this font. And then I'm going to, in my style sheet, I want to set this as the font for my site. So I'm going to open up my CSS file. It's in www root CSS. Here's our site.css. And in the body, I'll add Lato as my default font. If I go back and refresh, I think my CSS is cached. We'll try a private window. My font should change. Yep, okay, but this isn't the right font because I grabbed the italicized version. I don't want that. So, whoops. Let me fix that. We'll try that again. Bear with me. Didn't realize I was getting an italicized version of it. Okay. Put it in the chat. So there's our link. And then in site.css, I just added this to the body tag. I also want to override a couple of the colors in here. So for my navigation bar, if we look at the class that's used, for our nav bar, we'll want to find the color and override the background color. So we'll go back to our layout. So we're using navbar light. So I want to override the navbar light with a different color. So I'll go to my style sheet. And we'll find another color here. Let's just see. Let's see, I'll just pick something for the moment to see if I can change the color. I'll just pick light blue. I'll take out BG weight. I'll have to play around with my classes a bit. I should be able to change the colors and override it. You can override any of the styles. Obviously, I'm not doing the right class. Oh. My CSS skills stink. Sorry about that. There we go. So I've overridden the navbar light class in my style sheet by using a different background color. A great place to get colors, especially colors that are going to go together, is here. Materialpalette.com. This is a great place to show you color combinations that will go together. So maybe I like blue and this blue gray, and the material palette actually, no, you're not evaluated on this. So maybe I'll use these instead, use a couple of these colors. So it's actually copies the hex color to my clipboard. And I can try it there. So no, I'm not evaluating you on it, but several people asked, how do I change it? How do I customize the look? Okay, so you can override any of the Bootstrap classes. You can change the fonts. You can move some things around. next week, or sorry, in a few weeks when we start building our shopping cart as well, we're going to want to display the products and categories, but not in a grid. We're not going to want to show them to the customers. This is basically for the store owner to manage their catalog this way. We don't want to show the products this way. So we're going to use a different Bootstrap formatting. We'll use a card view to render this stuff. Okay. So I haven't done too much here. I'm just showing you kind of what's possible in terms of how you can change things around and kind of make the application your own. There is, I believe, a bonus mark for customizing the style. But the only thing you're required to customize is the header and the footer content, as well as customize the homepage content to explain what your site is. Okay, I think those were all the changes we wanted to make today. We'll keep it short for today. So you should have everything you need now to do your project. You're going to set up your web application and your database on Azure. You can create your models and generate your tables with migrations. And then you can scaffold your controllers and views, and then do some customization just to polish up the site. And then you just use continuous deployment from GitHub. So your project is always up to date. Okay, so we have no class next week. It is reading week. There is still a quiz, but you have until next week to finish it. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to get to doing authorization for a couple of weeks. So my suggestion is, for now, you just implement create, read, update, and delete. And we'll add the authentication later, because we're not going to have any opportunity to address that for 2 weeks. And authentication will be our next 2 classes, so in 2 weeks and 3 weeks. Okay, so if you need help, so you have 2 more weeks to finish the assignment. I will still have office hours, so you feel free to book an appointment if you need help with the assignment. I'm going to push my code up to GitHub now, and enjoy your reading week. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks.